Welcome to Lecture 5 for Old Testament Historical Books. This lecture will cover Israel under the rule of Saul. Roman numeral 1. Saul becomes king of Israel. Letter A. Samuel meets Saul. Number 1. Saul is a tall, handsome, wealthy man of the tribe of Benjamin. According to this passage, we find out that Saul was the most handsome man in Israel who was taller than any of the people, and his father was a wealthy Benjaminite. Secondly, Saul is sent to find his father's donkeys. When his father Kish had lost some of his donkeys, he sent Saul with a young man to go look for them, but they could not find them. Once Saul had given up finding them, the servant with him mentioned that a man of God was in the city that they were at, so they should ask him if he knew where the donkeys were. Saul protested that they didn't have anything to present to the man of God, who used to be called a seer, but now was called a prophet. But the servant said that they could present him with a quarter of a shekel of silver, to which Saul agreed. Thirdly, the Lord informed Samuel that he would send Israel's leader to him. When Saul and the servant began asking around, they found out that there was a feast on that day, and they could find the man of God at the feast. This is when we find out that the day before, the Lord had told Samuel that tomorrow he would send a man from Benjamin to be appointed the leader over his people Israel. Interestingly, the Lord said that Saul was the one who would restrain his people, recalling the warning God had given to Israel about wanting a king. Fourthly, Samuel shows Saul great hospitality. When Saul got to Samuel, the Lord revealed that he was the man whom he spoke of. So he invited them to dine with him and told Saul that the donkeys that were lost 3 days ago had been found. Saul was confused about the hospitality being shown to them because he said he was from the least of the tribes of Israel, Benjamin. Remember, the war against Benjamin and Judges almost decimated them. And Saul also said that his clan was the humblest of all the tribes in Benjamin. Samuel then placed Saul at the head of all 30 of the guests that had been invited, and he had a special meal brought out for him that he had put aside for when he arrived. After the meal, they slept on a roof that Samuel had prepared for them. But in the morning, when they were leaving, Samuel had the servant pass a little before them so that he could tell Saul the word of the Lord. Letter B. Samuel anoints Saul king of Israel. Number 1. Samuel gives Saul signs of his anointing. After anointing Saul with oil poured on his head and kissing him, Samuel told Saul that the Lord would use him to save his people from the surrounding enemies. And as a sign, he would meet 2 men who would find his donkeys, but inform him that his father is worried about him now instead of the donkeys. Then he will go further and find 3 men going to God at Bethel who will feed him, and then find a group of prophets, and the Spirit of the Lord will rush upon him, and he will prophesy and be turned into another man. Samuel ends this section by telling Saul that in 7 days he will meet him again and show him what to do. Secondly, the Spirit of the Lord rushes upon Saul, and he prophesied. When Saul left Samuel, the Lord gave him another heart, and all of the signs came to pass. Then he met the group of prophets and began to prophesy, to the amazement of the prophets, since they knew who he was. Thirdly, Samuel presents Saul to Israel as their king. Letter A. Saul keeps his conversation with Samuel a secret. Saul's uncle, who was possibly Abner, who will become the commander of Saul's army, asked him where he went and what Samuel said to him. But all Saul would say is that Samuel told him that the donkeys had been found and nothing else. This might be because he was fearful to be king, as apparent by him hiding in verses 20 through 23. Letter B. Samuel rebukes Israel for wanting a king. Samuel begins his speech to the people by letting them know that by wanting a king to rule over them, they had rejected God who saved them from their problems. Letter C. Saul hides from Samuel. After rebuking Israel, Samuel brought the tribes near and began to cast lots on each tribe to find the tribe to which the king would come. It obviously fell on Benjamin. Then he cast lots on the clans of Benjamin, and it fell on Kish. And finally, the lots were cast on the members of this clan, and they fell on Saul. Unfortunately, they could not find him at first because he was hiding with all of the baggage. Letter D. Israel accepts Saul as king. When Israel looked upon Saul and how there was none like him among the people, they all shouted, "Long live the king!" And letter E. Israel is told the rights and duties of the kingship. While we do not know what all Samuel told them and wrote in his book, we can assume that it was some of the same duties we are told in the Old Testament Mosaic Law. He was to copy the books of the law, to not multiply horses, to not multiply his wives, to not multiply silver and gold, and to not interfere with the judicial system. This section ends with many godly men of valor accompanying Saul, but some worthless men questioning him. Letter C. Saul defeats the Ammonites. Number 1. The Ammonites present their demands to Israel. The Ammonites besieged Jabesh Gilead, so the men of that city tried to make a treaty with them, but they said they would only make a treaty if they gouged out their right eyes. The elders then asked for 7 days to see if anyone in Israel would save them. Secondly, Saul assembles an army. When Saul got word of what happened, the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he was so angry that he cut a yoke of oxen into pieces. And then he had them spread throughout all of Israel with a warning that whoever would not fight with him would be treated like the oxen. On account of this, he was able to muster 300,000 men of Israel and 30,000 men of Judah, to which the people realized that salvation was near to them. Thirdly, Saul defeats the Ammonites in 1 day. Saul divided the army into 3 companies and struck them down until the heat of the day, and those who survived were scattered to the point that no 2 of them were left together. And fourthly, Saul is crowned king of Israel. After this great battle, the people requested Samuel put to death those who questioned Saul's leadership. But Saul said that since the Lord worked salvation in Israel that day, then no one will be put to death. Samuel then had the people take Saul to Gilgal, the capital of Israel at the time, to renew the kingdom, and they made Saul their king. Letter D. Samuel delivers his farewell address to Israel. Number 1. Samuel illustrates his integrity. Now that Samuel was old, he pointed out that he had obeyed them and appointed them a king. And he then asked if he had ever done anything wrong to them, to which they replied he had not. Secondly, Samuel charges Israel to be obedient to the Lord. Samuel starts off by giving them a history lesson on the Exodus, the need for judges in the first place because of their wickedness, the invading armies, and them having to cry out to the Lord. He reiterated how the Lord had appointed judges and how they got their king in the first place. Then he told them that they will fear, serve, and obey the Lord, then it will be well. But if not, then the hand of the Lord will be against them and their king. Thirdly, Samuel calls the Lord to send thunder and rain. In order to verify their wickedness, Samuel said that he would call on the Lord to send thunder and rain since it was the wheat harvest time. And when it did, the people greatly feared the Lord and Samuel. And fourthly, Samuel challenges Israel to serve the Lord. The people asked Samuel to pray to the Lord, his God, that they would not die. But Samuel replied that they should just not turn aside from following God and serve him with all of their heart and consider all the great things he had done for them. But if they did wickedly, then they would be swept away by the Lord. Letter E, Saul is rejected as the king of Israel. Number 1, Saul offers a sacrifice. Letter A, Israel wars against the Philistines. When Saul had been king for 2 years, he chose 3,000 men to go and do battle against the Philistines. 2,000 would stay with him, and 1,000 would fight with his son, Jonathan. In one day, Jonathan defeated a garrison of Philistines, but credit was actually given to Saul. In retaliation, the Philistines mustered 30,000 chariots and troops like the sands of the seashore, so the men of Israel scattered to caves and holes in the rocks and in tombs and even in cisterns. Letter B, Saul becomes impatient. Samuel had told Saul to wait for him, and in 7 days he would come to make sacrifice. But Saul got impatient when Samuel wasn't there, so he had the offering brought to him, and he offered it on the altar in Gilgal, where the tabernacle was set up at that time. Letter C, Samuel informed Saul of his punishment. After Saul was done offering the sacrifice, Samuel arrived and asked what he was doing. And after Saul made his excuses, which basically the people had scattered, Samuel was late, and the Philistines were coming, Samuel informed him that he was foolish for not keeping the command of the Lord, and now the Lord had rejected him as king, and his kingdom would not continue, and the Lord would find a man after his own heart to be the leader of Israel. Letter D, the Philistines restrict Israel's weaponry. Saul's 3,000-man army had now dwindled down to only 600 men, and the Philistines had removed all of the blacksmiths so that they could not sharpen their weapons or make them swords or spears unless they paid them to have them sharpened. So, on the day of their battle, no one had a sword or spear except Saul and Jonathan. Number 2, the Lord defeats the Philistines. Letter A, Jonathan and his armor bearer sneak away to fight. Without telling his father, he and the armor bearer left to go alone to fight against a garrison of Philistines. Before they got to the garrison, Jonathan told his armor bearer that when they got there, if the men told them to come to them, then that would be a sign that the Lord would deliver them into their hands. When they got to the garrison, they told Jonathan to come up to us and we will show you a thing. So they knew that the Lord would bring them victory, and they both killed about 20 men, causing a panic to spread in the Philistine camp, since there was also an earthquake that happened afterwards. Letter B, the ark is brought to Saul. After Saul realized that Jonathan and his armor bearer were gone, he requested that the ark be brought to him. And while talking to the priest, more confusion befell the Philistines, so that they turned their swords on each other, and even the Hebrews who had been with the Philistines turned to Saul and Jonathan's side. Letter C, Saul decrees a fast. Saul made the men swear an oath to not eat anything until the evening, so he could be avenged of his enemies. But Jonathan had not heard of this oath, so he saw some honey, dipped the tip of his staff in it, and ate some. When informed of what his father decreed, Jonathan pointed out that the oath was more harm to them than it was good, since a little food would make them refreshed for battle. Letter D. Soldiers violate the law. After winning a battle against the Philistines, the men took their spoil, but also began eating the animals with blood in them, which was against Levitical law. When Saul was informed of this offense, he told them to bring an offering for their sin, and there he built his first altar. And letter E. Saul sentences Jonathan to death. After Saul and the priests disagree on what they should do next, which was either go after the Philistines or stay and worship the Lord, Saul asked the Lord for guidance, but he did not answer. Knowing that this must be because of someone's sin, Saul promised that the guilty party would die even if it was his own son. So they took Urim and Thummim, which were rocks used by the high priest to determine God's will, and the lots fell on Jonathan. Saul then asked Jonathan what he had done, and he confessed to eating honey on his staff and acknowledged that he should die. Thankfully, the people would not let that happen, so they took him and paid a ransom so his life would be spared. This chapter ends by stating that Saul fought against many nations, especially the Philistines, his entire life. He had sons and daughters, and his uncle Abner became the commander of his army. Number 3, Saul disobeys the Lord. Letter A, the Lord commands Saul to completely destroy the Amalekites. Samuel told Saul that since the Amalekites opposed Israel when they came out of Egypt, the Lord told Saul to destroy every human and every animal of their people. In response to this, Saul mustered 200,000 foot soldiers and 10,000 men of Judah and went to the city of Amalek. And letter B, Saul spares the Kenites. The Kenites were apparently living with the Amalekites, but since they were kind to Israel when they came out of Egypt, in fact, some even traveled with Israel during the Exodus, Saul allowed them to leave peacefully. Some notable Kenites were Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, and Jael, who was the wife of a Kenite and the one who assassinated Sisera. Letter C. Saul does not kill Agag nor destroy the best livestock. While they did kill everyone, they did not kill the king of Amalek, whose name was Agag, and they kept the best livestock. This caused the Lord to tell Samuel that he regretted making Saul king since he had turned his back on obeying the Lord. Samuel then traveled to meet Saul and asked him what he had done. Saul's excuse was that he had held the best livestock in order to sacrifice to the Lord. But Samuel told him that it is better to obey than sacrifice. And because Saul had rejected the word of the Lord, then the Lord had rejected him from being king. Letter D. Samuel hacks Agag into pieces. Saul tried to make things right with Samuel, but he said it was too late, and just as Saul had torn some of Samuel's garments begging for mercy, the Lord had torn Israel from Saul. Samuel then had Agag brought to him and hacked him into pieces before the Lord in Gilgal, just as Agag had used his sword to make so many mothers childless. It is then recorded that Samuel and Saul went their separate ways and did not see each other until Samuel's death. Roman numeral 2. David is chosen as the next king of Israel. Letter A. Samuel anoints David as king. Number 1. The Lord sends Samuel to Bethlehem. Since Samuel was still grieving over Saul, the Lord basically told him to stop it, get some oil, and go to Bethlehem to meet a man named Jesse who had a son that would be the next king. Samuel, however, was scared to do this because if Saul found out, then he would have him killed. But The Lord said to bring a heifer with him to say that he was going to make sacrifice for the people of the city. When Samuel got to Bethlehem, the elders asked if he was there peaceably. Ironically, this may have been because they heard of what had just happened to Agag and were worried about what he might do to them. Secondly, the Lord chooses a son of Jesse to be king. When the sons of Jesse presented themselves before Samuel for the sacrifice, he first saw Eliab and thought he was the next king. But the Lord told him not to look on his appearance or height, because the Lord does not see as man sees. Man looks on the outward, but the Lord looks on the heart. Then he saw another brother, Abinadab, but he wasn't the one. Then Shammah, but he was not the one. And then all of the other sons of Jesse, which he had 8 total, but none of them were the one. So Samuel asked if there was another son of Jesse. Jesse replied that yes, there was, but the youngest was with the sheep. Samuel then made them go get this son. When they brought David to Samuel, he saw that he was a ruddy, handsome man with beautiful eyes, and the Lord confirmed that he was the one to be anointed as the next king. So David was taken by Samuel and anointed as the king of Israel, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David from that day forward. And thirdly, David plays a harp for Saul. After the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon David, it departed Saul, and the Lord caused a spirit to torment Saul to the point that the only thing that would bring him peace was the playing of a harp. When Saul asked for someone who could play the harp well be brought to him, one of his men mentioned that a son of Jesse the Bethlehemite, who was a skillful man in playing the harp, a man of valor, a man of war, prudent in speech, and a man of good presence, who has the Lord with him. So Saul sent messengers to Jesse to get David, and when David arrived and played for Saul, it helped so much that Saul loved David and even made him his armor bearer. Letter B. David defeats Goliath. Number 1. Goliath challenges Israel. The Philistines lined up on one side of the mountain while Israel lined up on another. And then Goliath of Gath came out and made a challenge that Israel should choose one man to fight him. If the Philistines won, then Israel would be their servants. But if Israel's champion won, then they would serve Israel. Interesting facts about Goliath. He was 9 foot 6 inches tall. His coat of mail weighed over 100 pounds, and that does not account for his brass helmet or his leg armor. And his spearhead weighed 15 pounds. Number 2. Jesse sends David with food for his brothers. While David went back and forth from the sheep to the troops, David's 3 oldest brothers, Eliab, Abinadab, and Shammah, were at the battle with Saul, and for 40 days Goliath challenged Israel. Meanwhile, Jesse sent David to the battle to bring food for his brothers and their commander in order to see if they were well. So David left his sheep with the keeper, and when he arrived at the battle, he heard Goliath's challenge to them. The men of Israel were afraid of Goliath, but David was more concerned with how this, quote, uncircumcised Philistine defied the armies of the living God, and what reward his killer would receive for killing him. The men told David that Saul promised the man who killed Goliath great riches, Saul's own daughter to wife, and his father's house would be tax-free. Interestingly, Eliab, David's oldest brother, actually got angry with David for coming and leaving the sheep unattended, accusing him of just wanting to see a battle. Number 3. David volunteers to fight Goliath. When David volunteered to fight Goliath, Saul said that David would lose the fight, but David explained how the Lord had allowed him to defeat lions and bears, both with his sling and even hand to hand. So this uncircumcised Philistine would be just like one of them. After hearing this, Saul agreed to let David go fight Goliath. This was probably on account of the fact that Saul loved David at this time and trusted him completely. Number 4, David brings a sling and 5 stones to battle. At first, Saul put his own armor on David, but he had not tested them, so he took them off and only brought a staff, 5 smooth stones, and his sling. Number 5, David kills Goliath with a stone and his own sword. Letter A, Goliath mocks David. When David arrived to fight Goliath, he made fun of David since he was so young, ruddy, and handsome in appearance. But David replied that while Goliath came with a sword and spear, David came in the name of the Lord of hosts, the God of the armies of Israel, whom Goliath defied, and he would strike him down and behead him that day. Letter B, David cuts off Goliath's head. David ran toward Goliath, took out a stone from his bag, slung it, and struck him right in the forehead, causing Goliath to fall on his face to the ground. Since David did not bring a sword with him, he took out Goliath's own sword, killed him with it, and then used it to cut off his head. This caused the men of Israel and Judah to shout for joy and pursue after the Philistines and plunder their camp. David then took the head of Goliath with him to Saul. Interestingly, Saul asked who his father was, not necessarily denying who David was, but inquiring as to his father's name so that he could possibly reward his father's house with being tax-free as promised. However, we will find out that this appears to be the only part of the reward David accepted. That brings us to the end for Lecture 5 for Old Testament historical books.